You know what I see every single week? I see people diagnosing themselves, but not considering the metabolic elephant in the room. They might be saying, I have chronic fatigue, I've got no willpower, I've got PCOS, I've got PMS, I have a lot of stress, I have injuries which won't heal, or even just simply saying, I'm getting old. Maybe. But what if it's insulin resistance quietly driving your symptoms and creating a terrain which doesn't allow natural healing or balancing anymore? It makes sense, right? If you've ever felt or noticed that things like healing or losing weight or coping emotionally are much harder these days than they used to be, almost like something larger than you is driving it all, cravings every 2 hours, you might be feeling frustrated about your lack of willpower. Like, why is it so hard to say no to those unhelpful foods these days? That's insulin resistance, hijacking your hunger signals or your satiety hormones like leptin and ghrelin. Hopefully it makes you feel better to know that this is a metabolic malfunction and not that just that you've grown weak and undisciplined as to what you're putting in your mouth. Brain fog. Do you have brain fog? Are you blaming it on baby brain, aging, or stress? You might be glad to learn that all women are insulin resistant whilst pregnant. Hence, you do have an actual excuse then. And if you aren't pregnant, you have an actual excuse too, because insulin resistance will be causing your brain to try and survive on an unstable fuel. Are you getting really frustrated with belly fat that just won't budge? Insulin is literally your storage hormone, and it's that locks off access to stored body fat for energy. So once it's stored, you can't easily access it again without lowering insulin. By addressing your insulin resistance, you don't have to keep snacking every few hours to keep your energy levels up. Your body literally becomes its own snack. Now, I'm not saying insulin resistance causes everything, but after hundreds of people that I've coached, I can tell you that when the metabolic terrain improves, a lot of mystery problems suddenly aren't so mysterious anymore. After watching client after client walk through my program, I see the same pattern. We don't have 100 different problems. We just have one metabolic storm wearing 100 different outfits. And before we go any further, let's just have a quick stopgap about what insulin is, because if you're like me, you didn't quite understand how the body works. I just thought insulin was a medication that diabetics injected into themselves to keep them from getting too much sugar building up in their blood. But insulin is the biggest driving hormone. It's the biggest director of metabolic traffic within our body. It drives storage of body fat, storage of toxins, storage of a lot of things, and it protects us by driving glucose from our blood into the cells where it can be used for energy. So any excess is stored as body fat. But here's the thing, most of us are stuck in a high insulin storage mode. We have more energy than we need. So insulin stores it away safely for us for times when it's scarce, but it's just never scarce. Insulin resistance is often the hidden amplifier between many modern conditions. So even when it isn't the original trigger. So whilst something like bursitis in your hip, it may have originally been caused by a sports or an overuse injury, insulin will drive inflammation and create a terrain which promulgates that condition. And it inhibits any chance of kind of recovering from it. We spend hundreds of dollars on turmeric and fish oil and remedial massage and physio, but it just keeps coming back until we address the high insulin, which is driving that terrain. Insulin resistance doesn't usually create the injury, as we're saying, but it can create the metabolic environment where injuries happen more easily and they heal more slowly. Bladder leakage is an example that I like to use because a lot of us blamed it on childbirth. And sure, childbirth was the trigger, but instead of spending hundreds of dollars on pelvic floor strengthening devices, maybe it was the insulin driving the terrain again. It's something that you can look into, and by lowering the insulin, inflammation drops, muscle conditioning and strength improve on their own. I once had a 7-week cough back about 6 years ago that I blamed on the doctor for not giving me antibiotics. It was high insulin controlling my low immune system. I was in a high inflammatory terrain, which was much busier attacking me rather than kind of fighting off the cold and flu stuff. Slipped ribs was one that I had. I don't know about you guys, but when I was insulin resistant and my insulin was high, I kept getting random injuries. I sprained both wrists, doing those tricep dips at the gym. I slipped 2 ribs off my spine just by picking up a container of cleaning products. And people blame age, but chronic inflammation and poor tissue repair don't just come out of nowhere. Often we ignore the metabolic load that's just sitting around our midsection, and this affects our core strength and muscle stabilization. Lack of sleep is a big one too. So if you're waking at 3 a.m. to go toilet every night, that's likely a metabolic issue. It could be stress, but also likely to be unstable blood sugar and insulin, which is like setting an internal alarm clock or warning. Hiatal hernia is another one. Small tears in places where there shouldn't be holes, including in your gut lining, aka leaky gut. They all can't heal in an environment where insulin is high. Some more examples: eczema, sinus problems, bloating, pinched nerves, neuropathy, which is numbness in your fingers, candida overgrowth, water retention, skin tags, black body hairs, brittle hair and nails. These are all symptoms of an insulin-driven metabolic terrain. Low iron, low vitamin D. Remember, insulin is a storage hormone, so if insulin is constantly elevated, it's storing hormones and minerals as well and locking them up in muscle, bones, and joints and tissues and preventing you from accessing those back into circulation when needed. PMT, unbalanced hormones? Maybe, but insulin is the hormone that kind of whispers to all the others. It sits at the top of the hormone hierarchy. You can have a group of 10 women and 8 of them will be convinced that their hormones have gone haywire. And maybe they're right, but by only addressing estrogen, testosterone, and those reproductive hormones, you're negating to address the hormone that sits right at the top and drives their efficiency, which is insulin. I'm not saying that insulin causes everything, but in 2026, if someone tells you it plays no role at all, they're ignoring the elephant in the room. The world keeps chasing new diagnoses, and I just keep seeing the same root problem. When you fix the terrain, you suddenly, a whole lot of mystery issues don't feel so mysterious anymore. So, how do you lower insulin? How do you flick that insulin switch from storage mode to burning mode? Well, it's easy for an insulin-sensitive child or teenager. They literally just wait a few hours and insulin is low enough to keep them out of storage mode. Once we're an insulin-resistant adult, though, our metabolism is compromised. It's not easy to just stop eating and lower insulin. Like, insulin has been over the years just staying raised. It's adapted knowing that carbs and sugars are always coming, so it's prepared. It'll stay well elevated and prepared. So it's a process to lower it. If you stop eating, you'll just become hungry, grumpy, and your body rebels against you. So we don't stop eating at first. We don't fast. We do a fasting mimicking diet. And this is one where we're still eating, getting all of our nutrients, but the foods we're eating do not spike insulin. So low carb, keto, carnivore, that's the order of effectiveness. Carnivore is the closest to zero carb, so it's the most efficient, and that's where I'm at and what I promote. The best way to describe insulin resistance is poor fuel switching. You've got 2 types of fuel, glucose and fat. A metabolically healthy person can easily switch to fat burning for energy, but an insulin resistant person can't do that this easily. So we have to kind of swing the pendulum as far towards fat consumption as we can and as far away from glucose consumption as we can. This is how we remind our body to use fat for fuel, and also how we slowly lower our insulin back to normal metabolic function again. When your body is reminded how to use fat for energy, weight loss is much easier. If you have weight to lose, you most likely have insulin resistance. So before you go and find yourself a low carb, keto or carnivore coach, write yourself a list of all those niggling conditions that have been hindering you, because like childbirth, they're so easily forgotten once they're no longer there. It's nice to be able to look back on them and look back on your list and see how far you've come. And that helps to keep you motivated as well and make sure you're on the right track so you can start looking and feeling younger every day. If you found this useful, please share, comment, so that Al Gore and his rhythms can just get more people to watch this. And if you have any other topics you'd like me to cover, feel free to ask away. I'm all for exposing the upside down world of nutrition And today's was insulin's turn. So it's very upside down to blame almost everything that's for anything that's going on anything but insulin. So let's put insulin resistance at the top and give it the attention it deserves.